An awkward silence filled the classroom. The 11-year-old girls sat silent and still. Guilt engulfed her, and she heard the words escape her. "I'll do it." She felt so out of place, standing at the front of the classroom, with all eyes on her, all ears listening to her. Each day in this room, she stays still and quiet, to remain unseen and unheard. Regret seeped in as she stood with a pounding heart and shaking knees. Sister Maureen gave the first note, and she began to sing in a faint voice with her eyes lowered towards the floor. Tantum ergo sacramentum. "That will do for now. Stay back after class," said Sister Maureen. Scrambling from their chairs, the children left for home, leaving her behind and terrified. She packed her bag and stood holding it, edging towards the door, as Sister Maureen enthusiastically guided her to the front of the room. "Stand here, head up, eyes straight ahead." Sister Maureen drilled the words into her. "Tantum ergo sacramentum." Again and again she sang, with no sense of whether it was right or wrong, or if she would ever be good enough. Her eyes scanned Sister Maureen's face, seeking criticism or validation or something, anything, as she spoke of the larynx, pharynx, soft palate, diaphragm, all words she didn't connect to singing. Then, "Follow me," and like a little duckling out of water, she followed the clip-clopping heels until they stood in the convent garden before the statue of Our Lady. She began, and her voice carried through the air. She raised up her eyes towards the statue and noticed above her only blue. Turning left and right, she could still see the blue. And she wondered, when did she stop seeing the sky? Why did she stop seeing the sky? Eyes down, no sky. Eyes up, sky. As they left the garden, her eyes darting, ensuring the sky was still there, she walked with her head up, feeling a little freer and a little safer. She absorbed all around her, the scent of roses from the vast flower beds, the lines of crosses in the burial grounds of Nanonagal's sisters, the sounds of the birds and the children at play in the park beyond the garden wall. She glimpsed the veiled silhouettes as they passed the arched windows of the convent. She noticed the gentle movements of Sister Maureen's veil and the rustling of her perfectly pleated skirt. In contrast, her own pinafore was well worn, and the sleeves of the cardigan Mom had skillfully knit were beginning to unravel. Sunday came around, and her fears returned. Blessing herself, she entered, walking up the long centre aisle, passing the seat she used to sit in with Nan for Mass, 5 rows from the back on the right. She looked, longing to see her sitting there, so as not to feel so utterly alone. She passed row after row, feeling tiny under the stone columns and arches. Then to the left of the altar, she climbed the steps to the pulpit, and she waited. Her hands tightly clenched her hymnal as her eyes followed each word on the page. Glancing down the church, she saw each pew fill, as men and women silently genuflected and filed in. Her breaths were shallow, her body stiff, but as the entrance bell rang and the priest emerged from the sacristy in his white vestments, she stood and she remembered. Eyes down, no sky. Eyes up, sky. And so she nervously held her head up and could see the vaulted roof and the stained glass window above the organ gallery. She heard the chains of the thurible as the altar server placed the incense on the burning charcoal. Smoke began to fill the sanctuary and catch in the back of her throat. But she began, and her voice filled the church. Tantum ergo sacramentum veneremur cernui. Then the congregation in chorus joined her, their voices blending into one. In that moment, she knew there was somewhere she could belong. That was the beginning of my faith journey. One invitation to sing at church, one guilt-ridden acceptance, a kind and encouraging Sister Maureen, and a strength and a determination I didn't know I had. I was drawn more and more to the chanting of prayers, to the toing and froing between priest and people, to being 1 in 100, and that 100 praying as one. I was home.